winter of 2022, two cannabis workers set out to gain more perspective on what it's like to work for the East Coast's first legal cannabis industry. Who's making all the decisions? Who's making all the money? And who's doing all the work? Find out on Behind the Bud. Tonight's episode, Sammy Shag.
This is Behind the Bud. We're here with a new guest today, Sammy Shag, right?
Yes, indeed.
You were actually our first guest that we've had on that we didn't really know before.
Yeah.
You know, like that we didn't have like as a previous coworker. Where did you get your start in the cannabis industry?
So I got into the industry shortly after I turned 21. I started working on the retail side at a medical spot. And then I worked a couple more retail gigs. I got into like field marketing support is what I would call it. Kind of third party marketing for a couple brands that worked with like a firm is essentially who I work for. And then currently I'm doing territory sales, like wholesale account management for High Ledges Cannabis. We're a new living soil grower, just started at the end of September. They're a tier 1 cultivator, which in Massachusetts is up to 5,000 square feet of canopy. We're using maybe half of that, 2,500. It's a really small team.
Yeah.
We're all hand trim, hand water. We've been growing the same 9 strains since commencement.
No kidding.
Yeah, so a bunch of them are like legacy cuts. Both of my bosses have been cultivating long prior to prohibition being lifted.
What kind of strains are we talking about?
Yeah, so like Deadhead OG, Mac 1, Gelato 41.
Mac 1, no shit.
Yeah, so we're doing all breeders cuts. We go right to the breeders for these guys. Like
kidding.
Capulator, who bred Mac 1's always like showing love and reposting our stuff. And then we have a couple strains that we brought in from teaming with Terps. He's a local Massachusetts-based breeder, so he does Butterwolf and Butter Stuff. Big goal of mine in doing that is to get us in some of these like big Boston accounts out here, man. Get High Ledges, good living soil flower into the hands of as many people that I can, really.
Yeah.
I could not have been doing anything more different to working in cannabis.
Sure.
Prior to the industry. I actually didn't even smoke pot till I was like 19, really.
Wow. No kidding.
I'm 23 right now. Yeah, so I did athletics all through high school and spent a couple years playing a Division I sport in college. People hear that and they're like, "Oh, you playing ball?" Like I wasn't playing a revenue sport. It definitely wasn't anything with a lot of optics.
What sport was it, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, it's a small sport. I don't totally want to dox myself. I will say I was on the West Coast. I was in the Pac-12 doing a non-revenue sport.
Wow.
But it was when I came out there, man, that I was in a big pot hotspot in the Pacific Northwest.
And you didn't even smoke.
And I didn't even smoke.
Wow.
I was always of the notion that like, there's no room for a successful athlete to be smoking pot, whatever. And then all these guys that I looked up to on my recruiting visits and stuff, they were all smoking weed on campus, man. It demystified cannabis to me. It was like, these are guys that I look up to, national champions in high school, successful athletes at a collegiate level. I wouldn't look at them any different if they were, cracking a 6-pack after practice versus smoking a joint.
Did you grow up in the East Coast?
Yeah. I'm born and raised in Boston. It's not like I came from a house where pot was like, taboo or anything. I mean, my parents aren't smokers, but it was just never something I was around. And there was totally like a lot of mystique to it. And not a lot of education. But that wall totally broke down when I was out on the West Coast. And, I never really liked my sport, truthfully. It was just like something I was good at.
You fell into.
Exactly.
It was a good form of discipline. A lot of us are in a good form of discipline. Yeah. Totally get it.
But the more I was around cannabis, man, the more I was just intrigued and wanted to learn everything there was. And I hated that this new part of me, I had to keep under wraps, man.
Sure.
Like NCAA dope tests and stuff. You can't be smoking weed.
The double life.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, a lot of guys that I know from that time were not surprised to hear that, like, after I dropped out my sophomore year, 6 months later, I was behind the counter in Mass selling weed. Yeah.
Do you think that was like the primary impetus for having left the sport?
It was kind of just a perfect storm of a lot of stuff and just a transitional time. And like I said, like people around me growing up would always be like, I can't tell if he loves this sport or if he absolutely despises it. It was just an outlet. It's like I wasn't really a good student. I didn't really have any passions or anything I was super into. Both my parents are artists, musicians. I have none of that stuff whatsoever. So it was like cannabis was the first thing I found that I kind of was like, I'm really interested and I want to learn, read everything there is to know about this plant.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've had really an inherent academic interest in something. I kind of dabbled with getting back into school, learning about horticulture.
So Sam,
Yeah.
Backstory for the audience.
Sure.
We attended Knan,
Yeah.
but we also met you there, and I wanted to really take a quick second to just let everybody know that Sam isn't one of not only our guests, but he's been a day one listener and he ran up to us at an event at Knan. It really means a lot to both of us. You know, just the podcast, just to have a fan, dude. Like, honestly, we talked about this. I did not. I'm still baffled. What made you want to jump on the show?
What made me want to jump on the show, man? I mean, so at first, I feel like my ethos on this, like if you'd asked me this question kind of when I first met D-Day a couple months back, like I probably would have given a totally different answer.
Right. Okay, wow.
But now being at a cannabis industry job where I love my life. I don't feel like I'm working a minute during my workday. Rather, I just love what I do and it passes by. Totally different experience than all the previous gigs I worked in the industry, right? Like I feel like a lot of your initial episodes, primarily the first two, some folks that you used to work with, it was a lot of like horror stories.
Oh yeah.
It was
big time.
It was totally an interesting light for folks that have never worked in the industry to kind of see the behind the scenes. But I thought it would be a really interesting perspective to come on now as opposed to then.
Yeah.
Now that I have a lot of success stories in the industry. I don't know. I feel like there's kind of a sentiment I see from people that work in the space that are not satisfied with things, where they're just like, whatever, man, it doesn't matter. It's all right. It's like a losing fight, whatever.
The will breaks a little bit.
Totally. Right, and like me personally, I'm not going out like that, dude. Like there's always gonna be real heads that are down to talk about real stuff, and it's just a matter of surrounding yourself with them.
So you just wanted to lighten up the load a little bit. I think that's real. I really appreciate you, just even for that reason alone.
Hugely.
Is something that me and D-Day talk about like all the time. About like what the audience wants to see opposed to what they need to see. It's been negative stories and been burnout stories, which it is, but it's also good to see that like you can share something that's the positive side, because that still does exist too. Like, it's like D-Day is a whole positive experience right now, and I'm proud of him. Like,
yeah, totally.
It's great.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like for every 100 people that I feel like talking to have lost themselves in this space, I just want folks to see that even if it's just one person that feels like they found themselves.
Exactly.
That's quote right there, man.
There is light at the end of the tunnel.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's part of the like gambit. I don't necessarily think that people can beat up on themselves for like what camp they find themselves in. Like one of the straws for me that kind of broke my back in retail is like I had a homie I was working with, and he showed me the sales numbers on the back end. He sold $1 million worth of product by himself that year and got a 50-cent raise.
Oh,
wow. And it broke my heart, man. It broke my heart.
That hurts.
I mean, can you imagine if he had a 0.5% commission on that?
Right? Oh my God.
He's still set pretty much. You know what
Seriously.
I mean? Pretty good. Shout out to every fucking buddy working in the industry or who has worked in the industry right now, because the game's fucked up, but we still choose to do it. And we still try to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yep. We still choose to keep the energy.
Yep.
Grateful for Sam to be able to come in and bring some actually positive news, because like we want to keep it even balance. Sure. Because this is a platform. Like Behind the Bud isn't like a directive. It's not an agenda, specifically not a fucking agenda.
Yes, it's definitely not an agenda. That's
exactly.
For people like you, dude, I'm so happy to like actually heard it from you. Yeah. And you know what I mean? To just have you guys want to come on. So we encourage people like Sam to keep getting on here.
I feel like when we met, right? You were in that sort of like more negative space about it, right? And
that was, I can tell you hands down, that was the worst job I worked in the industry. The field marketing stuff, man. Yeah. Doing that. I met some great people doing that job. Like I still am cool with both of my bosses there. I talk to them on the regular. Yeah. But just the actual day-to-day of that job was pretty draining.
Oh my God. So tell us like what your day was like doing that. So what did it entail?
Inherently, right? Like the structure of the gig, if you're offering third-party marketing services to people, as it like an alternative to them having their own marketing people, anyone that can pay to afford that service is going to be a larger multi-state operator for the most part.
Is that who you mostly worked for?
Yeah, so it's like a lot of the brands in our portfolio I really did not personally align with, which is fine. I mean, working in retail, I'm sure you have to sell all sorts of stuff all day you don't personally align with.
Yeah.
But just to me, I mean, that kind of stuff gets to me over time. I don't like lying to people. I'm not a salesman, even in my current job. It's like, I'm not looking to twist anybody's arm. If you smoke my weed when I send you samples and you don't like it, man, you're entitled to your opinion.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm not going to twist your arm for a sale because there's just not really a lot there for either of us. Yeah. It just got to me. And that's what led me to an extended job search, trying to find some gig where I felt like my ethos personally kind of aligned with the owners of the company.
Is that something that's contractual? Like when you work for like the marketing for these companies that call you up and
so you're 1099 contractor, so it's all
like a subcontract.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, so you weren't technically their employee.
No,
you
I
were,
was not. It was all contract based.
They were Ubering your shit.
Exactly. It was if you're familiar with any sort of ride share
fucked.
platform or like food delivery platform, it was kind of run like that, man. You check into the gig, you know, you're there, you check out of the gig. But a lot of it was just so asinine, dude. Like the stuff they'd have me set up. So I'd love to talk about sort of how I run my pop-ups these days in comparison.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the sort of comparison between the two.
So my experience with pop-ups before how I'm doing them these days was sort of just like a lot of swag and sort of like tchotchkes, stickers, lighters, things of that nature. Nothing that really showcases your product, explains what you're getting as a consumer, or explains, you know, why I should go with this company's product versus, you know, the stuff I'm used to buying.
Yeah.
A lot of it was just like, it was just kind of, I don't want to say meaningless, because I mean, I understand that the message was to put a positive face out there and have brand engagement. You know, sometimes we're trying to get them to sign up for newsletters or what have you, but it just didn't feel like there was really a purpose involved. Whereas when I'm doing pop-ups with High Ledges, we'll literally have a document that like shows where we source our cuts from. So a little blurb about the breeders, maybe the genetics, if there's like an interesting story about the strain or what have you. And then on the flip side of that, we kind of dive into living soil and, you know, why growing in sort of like a controlled, self-maintaining microbiome like this is conducive to more terpene production, perhaps different terpene production than you might get. Same thing with, you know, kind of alternative cannabinoids.
Yeah.
Because like honestly, with all the sort of testing changes and maybe some issues going on with testing, like people will see our COAs and they're like, all right, but is this real, or are you know, dusting a little keef on there? So part of my spiel at the pop-ups is sort of transparency wise. Like I lead with the flower and the COA, and then I kind of dive into why these numbers look the way they do. If you're sourcing top of the line genetics, whether it's your own in-house selections or you're grabbing breeders cuts of you know, some primo gear, and you're growing it in a dialed in environment, whether that be, you know, a 10th cycle in a living soil bed. I mean, I grow pretty decent herb, just cocoa, LEDs, salts. Like you can grow fire however you want as long as it's dialed. If you're putting good genetics in a happy environment, your tests are going to be pretty high.
I mean, when it comes to like the THC number, right?
Yeah.
I think it's also like, to be fair, right? When we step out of what we know, it's the only thing that a lot of consumers know.
Sure.
What do you do when we know all about the science of it? But what do you also do when it's like the major equation of how you're selling?
Right.
I personally, I challenge any person that buys High Ledges flower, like grab a pre-roll of our GMO. It's a super high tester. GMO in general is always a pretty high tester. Sure. We've had batches that have tested, you know, 40% TAC, whatever. Grab a gelato, usually pretty low tester for us. We've had batches that are like 17% TAC. Smoke them both, you will get equally as stoned. That's what we do all day. We can't tell the difference. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like it just, with having all that information available, there needs to be sort of, I don't know if you guys are sports guys, but like people who read too much into advanced analytics and can't just like look at a player and be like, he looks like he knows what he's doing out there versus he looks like he's slow. He's forcing it a little bit. Right. It's kind of just like the old eye test. Like if he's nice, he's nice. If it smokes, it smokes. Like, I don't know, man.
Everybody has their nuance, you know, but like, I get it. In all of my experience of being a bud tender, every fucking patient that was their thing.
Oh yeah, I mean they'll
explain anything. You can be like, yo, this shit has lasers on it. It can fucking shoot out a thief, and they'll still be like, what's it testing?
If I had a dollar for every single time I had somebody come in and just go, just see your highest tacking flower, please.
I mean, if it tested at 50% tack, dude, they smoke dog shit. I swear, like on everything. Right. I mean, so like when I started on retail working at a medical grow, they kind of did their pricing by tack. Yeah. So you would have stuff that literally came off the same plant that would be like in the smalls and would be at a deal versus, you know, oh, this is 30% tack and it's $60 an eighth for a medical patient. I'd like to think that I impressed High Ledges during our interview because, you know, I have the job. But job interviews are a two-way street, man. It's like they impressed me far more than I could have possibly impressed them. The conversation just kind of began, you know, about stuff sort of relevant to the position, and it quickly just went off the rails into just us talking shop about the state of the industry for the better part of 45 minutes.
No kidding.
Yeah, man. It was something that I had not been around. I kind of had worked enough gigs in the industry to know what I was looking to avoid.
Right.
And I didn't see any of those red flags. And as I kind of, got signed on, got more established, like I view my boss, he absolutely is like just as much of a mentor to me as he is a boss. As you know, that's certainly not par for the course in this industry to be treated like that by people you're answering to, your supervisors.
Yeah, there's so much turnover in so many other areas of the business.
That is one thing that always boggled my mind, is how much turnover there is considering how long the onboarding process is.
Oh my God.
When
and expensive.
I mean, so here's a funny story about that. I had a commercial cultivation gig that lasted until my lunch break. So I went through the onboarding, the hiring process, getting badged. Of course, it's like, stuff with the CCC. There's always like, oh, your middle name wasn't on this one. Your middle name was on that one.
Right.
Paperwork rejected, start over.
Yeah.
So like 6 weeks later, I'm finally ready to start. And, I show up, I clock in, trimming some of the most nauseating bud I've ever been around for about 2 hours. And it's just bugs everywhere, and I'm just like, I'm not feeling this one. This is probably not going to be a great match for me in the long term. I took my lunch break, and I just respectfully went to the person that had hired me, and I was like, I'm not sure this is going to be a great fit employment wise. I kind of don't think this is going to work out for me. And they, I could tell with the look, she was just like, I'm sorry to hear that. It was just like, it's probably par for the course, I would think. Yeah.
Damn.
I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty savage move, man.
I saw a lot of stuff that told me it's like, how could it have gotten to this point? And if I'm walking into this, Lord knows what it's gonna look like 6 months from now. Hell no.
Yeah.
No chance.
Seriously.
I'm just gonna save everybody's time. I'm not gonna waste your time. I'm not gonna waste my time.
Right.
Damn,
right.
That's bad.
But it's like you get enough gigs like that and kind of licking your wounds and going back to Indeed, and you're like, oh man, I don't even know if I could take this industry anymore.
I actually feel that right there. Where like, you have like a moment of clarity where you're like, do I really want to go back?
Yeah. How long did you work in the industry before you found the job that you liked? Like that, where you're at.
I started working in the industry when I was 21. I'm going to be 24 in a couple months.
See, there you go. Like it takes, sometimes it takes a period of years.
Yeah. But I'm just like saying, like, from my, like 5 years ago, jumping into the industry around, right? 21, 22, 23, 24-year-olds were not in the same mentality as you. It's such a rarity, man, to see somebody just with but then again, you and our other guest who's also your age group, dude, that's what's like for me. This is one factor of the podcast I didn't expect. I've told D-Day where I'm like, holy shit, like these dudes are young. They're like, I want to find out what's more. I want more.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So after listening to Stiz Gotti on the episode, like I actually reached out to bro. Like he's super cool. He got back to me right away. And there was something he said that really resonated with me, and kind of, I feel like is a good showcase of like where some guys my age are at thinking in the industry. He was saying like, everybody in your life will tell you, oh, grab this QP, bro. Like I'll put you on, whatever. Mm-hmm. That's putting money in their pocket. Nobody will put you on and tell you, how do you actually grow cannabis? How do you actually grow vegetables? It's the same damn thing, dude. I grow hella vegetables now that I grow weed.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it's like, I'm saving money on weed. I'm saving money on food.
Yeah,
weed's a gateway drug to financial security, bro. Is what it really is. Yeah, but that was super dope. Like that's a perspective that I've never really heard. And you want to talk about coming from two different spaces before ending up in the industry versus someone that was smoking and serving weed when they were 12, and like I didn't even start smoking herb till I was 19.
Yeah.
So just to hear that from him was super cool. So I reached out to him. I was like, bro, if you
ever
want to take me up on like listening to Really Talk and Growing, like I'll talk your ear off whenever any of your people that are interested.
Not to focus so much on like a negative aspect, but with somebody who works in a better business, right?
Yeah.
Like you talk about your product now with what you sell now versus what you sold before, right? Like what were you told to push back then?
So, I mean, it was the most interesting paradox for me, man, especially because getting started, I was working at a small medical only store.
Yeah.
And part of like my employment tenure there, they stopped producing RSO and tincture as the company got co-located and tried to transition to rec sales. And I had to watch my patients that I've been working with coming in. I mean, there was literally a gentleman I dealt with that had terminal inoperable cancer. Jesus. And like, these are people that relied on these products for relief, medical benefit, quality of life. And, they wanted me pushing these goddamn botanical terpene flavored vapes to med patients.
Right.
And that was one of the worst feelings ever, dude. It was like, it broke my heart having to tell people, oh, RSO is not in stock anymore. We're not producing it in the facility anymore.
Right.
People's lives, like their ears, like they pop when people say that.
Yeah,
Like you
dude.
said, like,
I mean, especially with the customer base we had at that store, it's like there wasn't really a lot of medical facilities around. It was kind of like fairly transit accessible for folks that couldn't really get around too easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are like really the people that need products like that accessible to them.
Right.
And yeah, man, that shit just broke my
just
heart.
imagine
Jesus.
hearing that bomb drop on you. Like, that's your medicine. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
you're not
so
going to go to
sad.
the pharmacy and they're going to say, "Oh, we actually stopped manufacturing your epilepsy medication. You're going to have to just raw dog it, homie. Sorry."
That's
But they get
That's a
insurance.
perfect way of putting it.
And you get like, usually there's always another medication that could take its
Sure.
place. I don't think it's the same for this though, right?
Like you're saying, like
Yeah.
with pharmaceuticals, you know, even if there's a formulaic difference between the generic and the brand name or whatever, like with cannabis, man, it is all so trial and error. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. Like anyone telling you how to grow weed a certain way, don't
Mhm.
listen to them. Anyone telling you smoke this, take this, if you have these conditions, don't listen to them.
Yeah.
It's everybody's personal body endocannabinoid system.
Mhm.
Find out what works for you. Do some journaling.
Right.
It takes time to dial in products that you're actually getting like medicinal
Yeah.
benefit from versus just like recreational use.
Mm-hmm.
And
Finding that therapeutic window.
to just move the finish line
Right.
in front of somebody like that and just be
Right.
like, "Oh, sucks, deal."
The company I work with stopped
Yeah.
carrying certain products as well. And I think at that time, RSO was on and off for us because
Yeah.
obviously it's not easy to fucking produce that shit, first of all.
Sure, yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
And then with the adult use dosing
if-
cap,
and-
I mean, that's
That or it just
Oh,
costs
right.
it costs a lot to fucking produce that shit too.
Yeah.
And so I had to tell people the same shit.
Yeah. It sucks.
man.
That's so funny. No, just that dead air right there. That was really funny. Dude, your fucking weed hit me real hard.
That's
tell
what's
you.
up, dude. That's
No,
like what I was saying. Like that's music to every grower's ears. That's why I love pulling up on people that are gonna appreciate good herb, and
Holy shit.
that's what's up, dude.
No, for real. I didn't
I have to
expect it
try
to
not
hit
to
me this
talk.
hard, but no, like straight up. Yeah. This shit's good.
I'm a
What
lot more
strain is
chatty,
this
but-
that you grew?
So it's called Zolio. So it's like I was telling you guys kind of
Zolio.
upstairs before we started recording. Like
Yeah.
I don't really love giving money to big seed banks. I
Sure.
think that like in talking to people that have been around since before Prohibition, it was always just like there's some dude in your area that's growing and breeding fire. It's just
Hell
a
yeah.
matter of finding him.
Makes
So I
sense.
always like buying stuff off of local breeders, small scale guys. A couple of the phenos came out really different. So there was one that was like super heavy on kind of the truffle platinum side of things, like pretty chimera heavy.
Yeah.
But that one I feel like I get a lot more Skittles. There's like, especially when you're smelling the
Oh my
bag, there's like
God.
a kind of candy tropical nose up front.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. 'Cause,
Like sugary candy.
yeah, it was a super different expression, like I was saying. And that's what's so dope to me about growing weed is like
Yeah.
the fact that you can pop 10 seeds and all 10 of them might be super different.
Actually, can I ask you a quick question just regarding
Yeah.
the grow? So what is no-till, right?
Yeah.
Growing, and what is it in comparison to the conventional growing for anybody else that wouldn't understand that?
So no-till is kind of like, I mean, I would say it's like more of a traditional agriculture term. I mean, I'm sure indigenous folks all over the globe have been doing this since the start of humanity. To dumb it down, it's like do nothing agriculture, basically. Like over
Yeah.
manipulation of the plant, bad. Do as little to the plant as you need to produce
Yeah.
the results you want, good. So tilling specifically refers to like manipulating the soil. As far as commercial agriculture goes, we till the shit out of our fields, and
Sure.
we have enough data now to see that it completely depletes soil fertility. It disrupts all the microbials, all the decomposers in the soil environment,
No kidding.
which is all the stuff that when you're growing in an organic living soil produces crazy terps and cannabinoids and some really good herb.
wow.
So we don't really manipulate the soil at all in no-till. How I'll do it is I'll harvest my plants. I'll cut it at the bottom at the base of the stem and just leave like this as little of the stem as I can in the root ball.
yeah.
At first, you could probably pick the whole 20-gallon pot up by the roots. Like that's how tight of a grip they have on there.
Wow.
In a couple weeks, they'll just break down and you can twist it right out. It'll leave you a little transplant hole. Pop the new plant in there. Just get going again. It'll fill out in a couple weeks and be huge. Yeah. And so as far as like organics, no-till versus, growing with salts and bottles,
Sure.
like quality, I feel like you yield great quality. I think you yield less bud though. I think if you're pushing heavy salt-based newts all the way is where you get those huge rock hard colas that are like, yeah, they look really nice and stuff.
Yeah.
But with
they don't smoke as nice.
With organics, I feel like once you spark the joint up, there's flavors till the filter, and it doesn't really have that kind of dead spot where the terps start going out.
One thing I also noticed too about this particular strain that you shared with us.
It's a good
today.
head high, bro.
Oh my God.
I'm
Excellent
chilling.
head high and a very significant full-bodied head high.
So
like
it kind of just made my day that you said that.
No,
so
for
like
real.
I went for that effect fairly deliberately. When you're harvesting, if you look at the trichomes on a microscopic level, that's sort of how you gauge trichome maturity and when to harvest. As trichomes mature, they'll start to turn more amber and more amber. And if you're chasing more of a kind of couch locky body high, people will say go for more amber.
Longer.
If you want more of a cerebral kind of all day buzz, definitely harvest with less maturity when they're a little like milkier or even a little cloudy, depending.
Right.
But this run, I always kind of take stuff pretty long, look for a lot of amber. I kind of just got to a point where I was like, I'm just going to chop a couple plants and see what's going on. And this was one that I chopped pretty freaking milky.
No kidding.
Yeah. So
Really?
that's pretty cool that you noticed that. Good on you for sharing. Yeah.
Nah, that's...
We had a moment of nothing for like a second.
The dead air is always a good sign as a grower for sure. Yeah, it's just like, all right, got him right where I want.
Did my job.
No, but you got some fire weed, brother. Like,
oh, that's what's
up. Thank you for sharing.
That's super dope.
That shit got me super high, man. How did you feel about Knan?
How did I feel about Knan?
Yeah.
Dude, that is the most... So it was also my first Knan, my first real big cannabis event like that. I've never felt like more of an outsider in the space, dude.
Bro, you came up to me like, I thought you were there like for like, you felt like an OG to me. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy that knows Josh?
No. I was so uncomfortable, dude.
So comfortable.
I mean, first of all, I have no social battery. That's like me putting myself out there for the remainder of the calendar year type shit.
Right.
And it was super dope to see people like my dog Organibus, Lightseeker Seeds, like you know, the small people in the industry that I've been friends with, and you know, catch up with you guys and some other homies I used to work with. But I felt like such an outsider walking around next to $90,000 pre-roll machines and like all this crazy tech, and it just kind of, I don't know, man. I mean, sometimes I'm not necessarily around those folks in the industry with who I deal with, but it's just a reminder that those headphones cats are out there, man. Like they totally are.
Oh my God.
I saw some wild stuff, dude. I saw some stuff I didn't like at all. Did you guys see the radiation people walking around, dude?
What?
The what?
Yeah,
I didn't. Yo, okay.
There were these guys that I kept noticing. They had like some joke about their weed being like gamma rayed or something on their shirt. I didn't really understand it. I mean, I don't remember what the phrase was, so it's like the value that's kind of lost. But then I remember seeing their actual booth, and they were pushing like just a giant remediation machine. Hey, you got pathogens, mold, whatever. Why throw it out when you can just nuke it and then sell it for a profit?
That's wild.
Like I feel like it used to be like kind of a fairly well kept secret, honestly. Like there would be talkings of irradiators in the industry, and everybody like, you're bugging, man. You're smoking too much weed. You're
and now they're just pushing it.
And now it's just out in the open for anyone to see.
Wow.
Is this really who we want to be? Who we want to be letting into these circles, man? And that's what I'm saying, where I felt like such an outsider at Knan, bro.
Seriously. Yeah, when we work for a giant MSO, and they would just like have these giant pallets of weed that were about to expire. You know? So I will check these batch numbers though. This is the craziest shit, right? In these testing batches, I have seen like dispensary, like disposables and cartridges, like that kind of shit. Distillate, right? Distillate can be made from fucking weed that was harvested 2-3 years ago.
Yeah,
but easily. And you see that all the time. Yeah. Like literally that is what they use it for. So they're just like, I have to imagine there's like these giant distillate banks that they keep like what?
Yeah, they have like giant beakers.
It's kind of funny you bring that up.
Yeah.
I mean, have you guys ever wondered where they're sourcing that material from?
So I do see, I will say, like on the metric histories, I see like probably 3 dozen flower batches under
it's
one
all
vape.
Frankenstein together from cultivators all across the state for basically whoever's got leaf and trim for the best price.
Wait a minute. Hold on. So you're telling me that like all the companies pool their shit together for like a distillate like conglomerate?
So not like deliberately, but essentially if you were looking to produce distillate, you're not necessarily getting all your material from the same person.
No.
You're gonna get stuff from grows all over the state, really. So if you have
this makes a
access
lot
to
of
all that
sense.
information, it would behoove you one day to kind of do some backtracking and see like, where did this,
That's
fruity
right.
distillate vape
Right?
actually come from? What
Yeah.
was this at one point in time?
Right.
It's kind of interesting stuff to me, at least. I don't know. A manufacturer, like whoever has the facility where they're going to make product like this, will buy sort of like the
As like a
excess
raw
plant
material. Right.
Yeah, leaf, trim, shake, what
Yep.
have you. It's because they themselves have no manufacturing. So they have it's not a single source operation where they're growing their own plants and then running those for distillate. But like they're just kind of taking whatever they can get because they're not vertically integrated. So that's how when they drew up their license, it was like you have to source these
Right.
plant materials from other producers.
Gotcha. God, that makes sense now.
That's good insight. That's good. Always good insight.
That's
to have.
crazy.
Yeah.
Folks, it's really good weed here, sir.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to get back on track in some ways.
Yo, D-Day's lost.
I'm glad that I can say moving forward that I've definitely had you guys the highest for a behind the butt.
Oh my, no,
taping,
seriously.
Dude. That's pretty funny.
That is actually true. I will have to say that. Because I mean, I'll smoke joints during, and smoke the Puffco and whatnot, do dabs and whatnot. But yeah, no, this is definitely this is the most blasted I've gotten during a recording. For sure. Too. Yeah. Kudos to you.
Yeah.
So you went from being like a Division I athlete to like exposing.
It sounds cooler than it is. I'll definitely have to show you guys off camera I was actually doing.
It doesn't matter. Like, I mean, going from that like level of competition or whatever, right? To basically, essentially giving that up to pursue what you actually like doing.
Yeah.
And one of those things is smoking weed.
Oh yeah.
So like how did that how did that transition happen? What was your first time smoking? Right? How did that first incident happen? I want to hear how the
first
seal
time?
was
when
broken.
I kind of came out to campus my freshman year, I don't know. I always have these like kind of little brother, big brother relationships. I never really fallen with kids my age. So like a bunch of the seniors on the team were really the first guys I started kicking it with, and they could all go to dispensaries and stuff. And they used to have this Volcano vaporizer. If you're familiar with that.
Kidding. Yeah.
I know that.
So I used to find myself over there kicking it with them after practice while they're loading up bags or whatever. And that was the ritual. It was like you get home from practice, shuffle the deck of cards, pack the Volcano, and just like just start talking bullshit.
Yeah.
And the more I found myself at the table, the more I found myself curious about like, maybe I'll hit that bag one time and see what that does for me. It was like totally not par for the course of how most people run into weed. I was smoking a dime bag of Reggie with like 10 people on one blunt type shit. Like I was coming up smoking dispensary weed out of volcanoes and stuff. Like,
right. Yeah.
When you say it like that, it's so fucking funny.
You're getting a safe product. You know what you're doing.
Totally.
It's yeah.
And that was how those assholes always justified it to me. They're like, oh man, if we're going to be smoking, we might as well not be combusting, right? Like our coach would almost probably rather prefer this.
Right. Yeah.
And to sort of fast forward to where we're at now. Still being in touch with all those guys, obviously, and like they're always asking me about what's going on with the industry.
I was gonna say, are they fascinated
about it? Yeah, being able to actually like smoke bud that I grew with them when they were like rolling up for me and stuff back in the day when I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah,
it's just another one of those kind of full circle moments. I guess talking about it in this session, I didn't realize how many of those I've kind of had with cannabis.
For sure.
Yeah,
right.
I feel like there is such a parallel, particularly between the sport that I did and growing, but just like, I guess just with sort of high level athletics, high level, anything you take seriously and growing, where like if there's a certain, like if you sell your soul to growing cannabis, you'll grow some fire herb. If you sell your soul to selling weed behind a counter, you're still going to get the same hourly wage. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those outlets where like, even if you're just kind of chipping away in the dark for months without seeing any tangible improvement, one day it all will catch up to you. And that's how it always felt training. It's like, maybe we're talking literally chasing fractions of a second in a race or something. And like, you don't necessarily see that tangible improvement until you kind of line up and then it just all falls into place. And you're like, that's why I was putting in what felt like thousands of meaningless hours. Like, why am I doing this?
Right.
I totally feel the same way about growing.
Yeah.
It's a great outlet. I mean, if you're a breeder doing your thing, you can do it all out of a 4x4 tent, man, in your house. And that's your shtick.
Yeah.
But it would be so dope for me to take something that I created to a retail market someday. That's like totally what I'm after long term.
When you invest in a grow, like how much did you say would it like if somebody were to start off themselves, how much would they have to invest to like really get a good grow under their belt?
I feel like when you start off, there's almost no sense in really spending too much money.
Okay.
You're going to figure out so much of it along the way.
Sure.
You're going to make so many mistakes. You're going to do stuff 2 years down the line. You're going to be like, damn, man.
Yeah.
That was a rookie mistake.
For sure.
I think once you kind of get your comfort level up a little bit, just like working with the plant the day to day of like watering, sort of training, pruning, topping, what have you.
Sure.
That's when you can start diving into like, all right, maybe I should try to dial in my environment a little more. Get some better pieces, get a better light. Sure. Play with different things. But I think people should definitely keep it pretty basic for their first grow. I don't think people should grow autos for their first grow. I hear a lot of people say that they think auto flowers are kind of beginner friendly. I can see both sides of the coin, but like any new grower I know, and definitely myself growing autos starting off, is like I just had a bunch of 12-inch tall flowering plants that like as soon as their roots hit the bottom of whatever
they're veg,
they'll just get stressed and flower.
Wow.
So
that's
it's like,
funny.
Yeah, if you want to do a super micro grow and have like, a little quarter ounce for the head, sure. Grow a super tiny auto bonsai and go crazy. But like, I spent a lot of time vegging my first plant ever. I just kept it in veg kind of indefinitely until I felt like I had a handle on it.
Yeah.
I wasn't on, like, I didn't give myself a timeline of like, I want to do seed to harvest and have this be smokable by this date. I was just like,
that's
kind of play it by ear.
That's cool.
It's cool to firsthand be able to talk to you. Kind of pick your brain, bro. Like you're ahead of your years, man. Like, you know what I mean? Kudos to you and your generation right now with that.
For real.
That's super dope, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
obviously value you guys' opinion. I wouldn't have gone on your show if I didn't. So that's like, that's super awesome to hear.
No, dude, seriously. We really appreciate having you on the show and being able to share your insight with all these things and sharing your experience. And especially like, we'd love to have you back on the show.
Absolutely.
Anytime, because like, this is been such an informative conversation. I'm going to have a hell of a time trying to edit down.
I was going to say, good luck. Feel free to get at me on Instagram at Sammy Shag _
Hell yeah.
I like to, kind of like post some stuff I'm growing here and there.
Word. Yeah.
I mean, you got some serious
set myself up
so.
to have a platform to like, showcase some genetics when I'm ready to
do
stuff like that.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
Definitely would love to have you on again if you're ever open to that.
Big time.
It's time for you to sign the wall, bro.
Seriously, we love having you on the show, and this is one of the best interviews that we've done. I feel like, really, like honestly, just in terms of like information and just getting that positive perspective, right?
Yeah, man.
Love seeing somebody who's like gung ho about it and still going for it, right? Because there's some of us still out there that are still really going for it, right? Yeah, totally, absolutely.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for giving me a platform to say some stuff that's like always on my mind. So,
absolutely, right?
I'm just so happy that you utilized it and it was like, yo, this is what it's for, man.
Hell yeah, man. Absolutely. Love to have you on again. And we'll see you next time on Behind the Bud, folks.